There are some events that happen in our lives, and they leave us with a feeling of warmth, and they last for several days. Do you remember the old comic strip Barry's World? Well, it was a one-panel strip, and it was usually on the op-ed pages every day. In fact, there was a book where they compiled all of these together, and it was in my local library when I was a kid. And I remember checking that book out so I could go home and read those editorial cartoons. And maybe that's where I first started getting interested in politics, even as a little boy, because you'd read the cartoons and it would like dawn on you that this actually is about something really going on. This isn't like Nancy and Sluggo, which wasn't funny anyway. But Barry's World was funny. In fact, one of the greatest Barry's World comics I ever happened to see is you see Lyndon Johnson sitting in a helicopter, and he says, looks at his daughter and he says, "Linda Bird, go tell Lady Bird I'm waiting in the whirly bird." And then he says, forget it. And I love that particular strip because it gave you an inside view, perhaps, of what goes on sometimes in the political world. And after the 1980 Olympic hockey team defeated the Soviet Union at Lake Placid. No, that was not the gold medal game. There was still another game that had to follow, which, of course, luckily they won. But when that happened, there was a Barry's World, and you see a guy sitting in his chair in the living room, and he's just sitting there with a smile on his face, but otherwise almost catatonic. And his wife says to a friend, "Yeah, he's been there like that ever since the hockey team won." And this was like a month after the game. I've had that feeling after the debate on CNBC for the last couple of days. Every time I think about it, I break out laughing because it was such a smackdown of mainstream media. It was such an eye-opener of how media actually operates in this country. And for all of those people out there who've been doubters, and all along you've got a lot of people out there and there's still some of them trying to defend what was going on. This is Dana Mountebank over at the Washington Post. The headline of his column today is, "A Peevish Pack of GOP Contenders." They were mean to all of my fellow travelers over at CNBC, and I don't like it. And just showed you how mean they were, and that's why you've got to vote for my friend Hillary or Bernie. And those Republicans are mean people because they snarled when they got asked all of those dopey questions. Apparently, Dana Milbank, that's his real name, he's not in very good contact with the American public. You see that all the time. You see a newspaper editorial and they'll say, "Well, here in our community, people aren't like that. We here in this community." Speak for yourself. You're not speaking for everyone. And Dana Milbank likely never he's a member of Skull and Bones, came out of Yale University, grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth, and yet he thinks he's going to tell the rest of America how we think or what we should think. Or he believes we all think like he does. And those guys on stage asking the questions at that debate on CNBC the other night, they all thought, we'll call Donald Trump the town clown, and everyone, they'll know what we're talking about. Won't that be fun? Yet, when they heard the audience applauding, they thought, well, that's just Republicans anyway. So Megyn Kelly sat down with a group of voters. Megyn Kelly, as you know, is the host of the Kelly File over at the Fox News Channel. She sat down with a number of voters, and she had a conversation with them. And these are voters. Some are Democrats, some are Republicans, some are independents, some are likely far left, some are far right, some are in the middle. And this is a montage of some of the responses she got, reactions from people about that debate and the line of questioning.
To me, it was just a game. It was a comedy of errors.
I was expecting a more robust conversation and connection with how these candidates were going to effectively deal with the economy, and we just didn't get it.
The fact that we're in $18 trillion worth of debt as a nation is an issue that should be discussed, not whether Marco Rubio took money from his 401k and the penalties he'll be receiving.
They were manipulating the questions, coercing the answers to fit a narrative, and in doing so, they cheated the American people, the undecided voters, from really setting out to think about whom they would prefer come election time.
They have the candidates up there trying to justify themselves, their policy positions, their personal lives to the moderators, rather than trying to use it as a forum for educating all the voters out there who have to make a very important decision very soon.
Their tone was very snarky.
The moderators were also argumentative. They tended to interrupt. They were disruptive. They interrupted the answers, and I found that they were argumentative with the candidates.
And I got to tell you, as a Republican, I feel vindicated because whenever I talk to someone who may be liberal, Democrat, and they say, "Where'd you get your information from?" I say, "Fox News." "Oh, Fox News." Well, you know what? Now we see where the mainstream media, the way they're leaning to the liberal left.
I got a buddy of mine I used to work with at a radio station, a couple of different radio stations back in the 80s and 90s, and he's now a teacher at Mercy, Detroit Mercy. That's a college in Detroit, Michigan, and he's an uber liberal, and he teaches media, and he tells his students Fox News is bad and biased and everything else. So he was sharing that with a group of us one day, and one of my other buddies said, "Have you ever watched Fox?" And he said, "No, I don't need to watch it. I know what it's all about." Huh? You're telling your students what it's all about, and you've never seen it? I don't need to see it. And he's teaching impressionable young minds. There was a story when the first war started after the 9/11 attacks, and that was in Afghanistan. Way back in 2001, the attack started on Afghanistan in October of that year. And the New York Times went and interviewed one of these tribal leaders who teaches at one of these Islamic schools where they teach all of the young boys, hate America, hate Jews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was telling the New York Times reporter about what Americans were like, and the Times reporter said, "Have you ever been to America?" "No, I don't need to go there. I know what it's about." Well, this stupid illiterate had never been more than 5 miles from where he lived up in the mountains in Afghanistan, and he's sitting there telling people what America is like. It's no different than my friend teaching at Detroit Mercy, who's never watched Fox News, and yet telling his students, Fox News is a bias. As if MSN, DNC, and CNBC aren't, right? Marco Rubio, who was also one of those who had a great opportunity and took it, giving a shot to the media the other night. Just about every candidate on stage, except for Jeb Bush, was quick on their feet and were able to do that. I should point out, John Kasich, though, said that the line of questioning was just right. Well, he's a Jeb Bush clone, so neither one of them are going anywhere with the electorate this year. Let's keep that in mind. How much is the media in denial about its role in all of this? This is Marco Rubio yesterday morning on CBS News. CBS has a morning show. Did you know that? I remember being at an RTNDA convention in San Antonio, Texas in 1998. Jane Clayson was then the co-host of CBS Morning News, and she was giving a speech, and we were all sitting in this big convention hall, and it was kind of noisy. And then just as the noise died down, I turned to a buddy of mine and I said, "This will be the biggest audience she's ever had." And my voice carried across the room, and you could hear peals of laughter because no one watches CBS Morning News. No one has ever watched CBS Morning News. It's either the Today Show or Good Morning America, and I'm not necessarily endorsing those either. So most people didn't see this exchange, but Charlie Rose, he's got 40 years in the media business, if not more. Charlie Rose is talking to Marco Rubio. Charlie Rose is in denial that Hillary Clinton lied about Benghazi.
I've never personally attacked anybody in this race, and I'm not going to start now. If other people decide they want to change who they are,
you called Hillary Clinton a liar, Senator. You called Hillary Clinton a liar.
Well, no, I said Hillary Clinton lied about Benghazi. There's no doubt about that, Charlie. I mean, there are emails in which she was talking to her family, and she was telling them that there was an attack on that consulate that was due to a terrorist attack by al-Qaeda elements, and then she was going around the country talking to the families of the victims and to the American people and saying, no, this is because of some video that someone produced
Senator,
that led to a spontaneous uprising.
That the CIA was changing its own assessment of what happened there during that time zone.
That's not accurate. It was clear from the very early moments after that attack that it was not a spontaneous uprising. It was a planned attack, well orchestrated by people that brought armaments to that attack that you would never see as part of a spontaneous uprising.
So Charlie Rose and CBS News believe that they have to drag Hillary Clinton along and drag her across the finish line no matter what. And even though during her testimony last week in the Benghazi hearing up on Capitol Hill, she did not deny that she had sent out emails, one to her daughter, and then had an email conversation with the president of Egypt the following day saying this was a terrorist attack. She did not deny that, and yet they went ahead and they went out and they said, this is about the film. This obscure film that nobody has seen. Well, apparently over in Benghazi, where they don't have any YouTube, they saw it, and they decided to riot. Yeah, all on the spur of the moment. Rubio goes out and says it was an organized attack. It had been organized for a long time. And Charlie Rose is like, yeah. Come on. Isn't that enough? I mean, even if you're a Democrat, you've got to be embarrassed by these people in media who take this approach. I mean, it shows you just how ridiculously biased it is. They're in denial. I mean, Hillary lied, and they said, here's the evidence. She didn't deny it. And Charlie Rose says, well, yeah, but we're not going to get a fair shake for any of these other candidates because of that. So if you're aware of that, and at least you know that going in, it will help you make a more informed decision. Now, more fallout from this debate. Reince Priebus was appearing last night on Sean Hannity's program, and he was talking about the difficulties they had with the people at CNBC, and not happy either.
Obviously, we had assurances that it was going to be straight up finance, which is what they do every day.
Let me
and
ask
what
you,
was
could
delivered
you imagine
was just nothing but a crap sandwich.
He is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, and for full disclosure, if you go to my Facebook page and you go back far enough in the photos, you might have to go back about 4 years. There's a photograph of Reince Priebus and I at a barbecue arm in arm, which took place outside of a brewery, which probably is all you need to know. At the time, I really was impressed with him because he was the guy behind Scott Walker's rise in Wisconsin. I don't know that he's been that solid a chairman. On the other hand, during his time as Republican National Committee chairman, Republicans have made great gains. They control both the House and Senate now, and they control most state houses across the country and most state legislatures. So I guess he's been okay. He's taken some heat from people who say, well, you know, he allowed CNBC to do this debate. The networks do not allow the parties generally to pick the moderators. Networks spend a lot of money on this, putting these things together, so they generally hold that right and do not let anyone else pick who's going to sit there in those chairs. You may not have liked him, but Jim Lehrer, who was part of the McNeil Lehrer NewsHour at PBS for many, 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 many years, now retired, but Jim Lehrer used to do a lot of these debates all on his own. And I thought, I don't know what Jim Lehrer's politics are, and that was the great thing about it. You never knew what his politics were. He could have been a liberal. He could have been a conservative. Could have been a communist. But when he sat down and he did a debate, you knew it was going to be fair. And it was just, but it wasn't entertainment. That's what these have become since then. And now, and going all the way back to 2012, with Chris Matthews shutting down Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney said, no, it's not about the film. And Matthews said, yeah, everybody knows it's about the film. And shut him down and wouldn't allow him to follow up with that. Or Candy Crowley, who actually shut Romney down and then after the election said, well, I made a mistake. No, you did not make a mistake. You knew what you were doing. You were dragging Barack Obama across the finish line. That's what that was all about. I miss Jim Lehrer. I really do, because if you had someone like that, sure, the audience might not be that big, but there's an old line from Andy Rooney where he said, he's talking about political conventions. He said, the networks don't really want to broadcast them anymore because they tell us that only 15% of the population watch them. But then Rooney said, that 15% has 85% of the brains in this country. Enough said. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you. Oh, Jeb Bush still sulking about the other night. We'll talk about that. I hope our buddy Jose is listening this morning. He, of course, is in denial and has been for a long time about his beloved Democrat Party and who actually controls it, how it operates and the like. Because I'm going to share this one. And this, of course, they always try to discount this over on the lefty just doesn't want to hear any truth about these things. There's a website called intercept.com. And it's really, these people really dig up a lot of stories. And headline, television news network lobbyists are fundraising for Hillary Clinton. Oh, really? Well, now, I'm just absolutely shocked. Shocked to find out that they're fundraising for Hillary. The top fundraisers for Clinton include lobbyists who serve the parent companies of CNN and MSDNC. The National Association of Broadcasters, a trade group that represents the television station industry, has lobbyists who are fundraising for both Clinton. Also, we should point out for Marco Rubio, who we keep being told is the establishment candidate. And media would much rather have him around than Ted Cruz. Media keeps telling us Ted Cruz can't win. They tell us Ted Cruz can't win because they don't want Ted Cruz to win. He threatens the big government soup, and so you can't have that. The writer goes on to say CNN's parent company Time Warner is represented on Capitol Hill by Steve Elmendorf, an advisor to Clinton during her 2008 campaign, who is also known as, quote, one of Washington's top lobbyists, unquote. He's lobbied on a number of issues important for media companies like CNN, including direct-to-consumer advertising policy. Elmendorf, according to disclosures, has raised at least $141,815 for Clinton's 2016 bid for the presidency. Now, this is several pages long. If it helps, I could read it all, but I just don't want to sit here and read all morning long. But then it goes into Comcast, the parent company of NBC and also CNBC and MSDNC, and it tells you how much they've raised. And then it goes down here a little bit to CBS, and it's just more and more. This is just, it's incestuous. Critics have complained, the writer says, that corporate news networks have promoted establishment candidates at the expense of outsiders. FAIR, a media watchdog group, reported in June that, quote, Meet the Press. I don't even know if I have to say that in quotes. NBC's marquee political program mentioned Clinton 16 times in the first 17 episodes of the year, while failing to invite or even discuss Bernie Sanders once. Well, Hillary's our gal, you know. 9:25, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Of course, you can reach our program by dialing 736-0300. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, and you're up next on the air.
Hey, Bill, good morning.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to say, the media talking about Ted Cruz, it's just comical the way they come out and say, oh, this person can't win, that person can't win. Boy, that is where you really need to focus on that person because, if that was the truth, they would be out there promoting him beyond the sky,
Well, I'll go back to 1980. 1980, Ronald Reagan can't win. Americans think he's a buffoon and going to blow up the world.
Absolutely. That's
and they
right.
elected him
Bill.
twice overwhelmingly. Hey, thank you much. And yet they still say, well, we've got a pulse on what the American people think. Whenever I see one of these dopes sitting around on ABC's This Week or Meet the Press or, they have the media roundtable and who was it? He got arrested for DUI a few blocks from my house several years ago. Sam Donaldson. Sam Donaldson was on one of these shows and he kept saying, well, the American people think. How do you know? You're sitting around just guzzling wine all the time and then driving home afterwards, blottoed, and you have this very small sphere of friends and people you hang out with. I'm sorry, Sam, but you don't know what the American people think. When you're not abusing your dry cleaner, I'm sure that, the only person you ever have any interaction with other than the echo chamber that you work with. 9:27. Sadly, I think Jeb Bush is pretty much now just flailing at anything. He happened to appear on Sean Hannity's program last night on Fox News Channel, and he was also reacting to the debate.
Marco, look, he had the worst attendance record prior to being a president, a candidate for president, and he's just made it clear that this is something that's not as interesting as it once was. The bigger issue isn't his attendance record, it's can he solve these problems? Does he have a proven record to fix the big complex things that our country has? He's a great guy, don't get me wrong, and I voted for him, I supported him in every way, and I believe that I have the executive experience and the ideas and the proven record to fix things, and that was the point I was trying to make before I got cut off. The debate made it really tough to have an actual conversation about anything.
Yeah. That's my next question. I mean, I thought the media was disgraceful,
crazy.
and we'll discuss that with Reince Priebus. What were your thoughts?
I thought they didn't control the debate. I got asked fewer questions. I was trying to interject myself into conversations I thought were important, like healthcare and others. They asked me about fantasy football. Really?
Is he just a jerk, or is he just... Peggy Noonan said today, he's not very good at this. That's a quote from her column. He's still hammering on Marco Rubio after Rubio mopped up the floor with him the other night. And he can't help himself. It's like, you go dig the hole a little deeper, Jeb, for crying out loud. And then he starts saying, oh, they're asking me about fantasy football. Well, he answered the fantasy football question. Oh, my team's undefeated. Oh, Rob Gronkowski. Oh. It wasn't him who shut the moderator down. It happened to be Chris Christie, saying it was a stupid, ridiculous question with a country that's $20 trillion in debt. And yet, it's like somebody just keeps saying, Jeb, we'll just program you to keep saying these things. It's not flying with anyone. It's not working. He won't be around a heck of a lot longer. 43, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Oh, Vladimir Putin is angering the environmentalists and American leftists to no end. We'll tell you why coming up in a few minutes. One thing I can say about Putin, he may be a despot, but you know what? He's an honest despot.